1969, French-Canadian nationalists in the province of Quebec demonstrated against legislation guaranteeing education in either English or French. They saw it as one more threat to the survival of French in a province whose economic life was already dominated by English-language corporations. Such social unrest was typical of the climate in which international business was increasingly having to operate in the 1960s and 70s. In the boardrooms of corporations like Steinberg Limited of Montreal, a major retailing, manufacturing, and real estate company owning one of the 4 largest supermarket chains in Canada, the attack on English as the dominant language of business in Quebec was already drawing a response. James Doyle, Vice President and General Counsel, reports to the Executive Committee.
We lack sufficient highly qualified French Canadians in our middle and senior management levels. And we haven't got enough in the middle management and in the people who aspire to middle management levels to rapidly change that balance through promotion from our existing employees. We don't have sufficient potential built in. So what I'm recommending is that over the next few years, we put on a real push towards hiring French-speaking university graduates to try and overcome this imbalance.
Do you mean French Canadians, or you mean people who speak both French and English?
I am talking French Canadians because
that's a difference,
no,
eh? Because then you go on and talk bilingualism.
Right. I've said you're not going to promote French Canadians up the line who can't speak English because they aren't bilingual. We said right at the start we want to be a bilingual company. But I'm saying at the same time we want to be a company where French Canadians can be identified as being given reasonable opportunity to come up. And I say today you have to give them a little more than reasonable opportunity. Anytime a pendulum swings a little too far in one direction, as it has for a great many companies in the province of Quebec, which are for many good reasons dominated by English-speaking people, then if you're going to change
bilingual
that...
people or English-speaking people?
He's making it clear.
I'm saying English-speaking people, whether they're bilingual or not. I'm saying that French Canadians, even if they are bilingual, are going to still say, I'm looking for a French Canadian presence in that organization because 85% of your customers are French speaking.
You want the ability to understand and grow, or is it that you are taking and I'm going to use the word, a separatist kind of view and saying if I don't get French, and French only, I don't want to participate. Now, you know, those three things have to be said too and come out on the floor because, and I make no apologies for the Quebec division.
The corporation's Quebec division is the one most directly affected by the problem of bilingualism. The division's vice president, Jack Levine, talks to his middle management.
And I don't know of any people or person around here except myself that doesn't speak French, that can't converse in French or understand French.
Vous avez dans les magasins des gens à 90% français. Et déjà, au point de vue entraînement, ils sont beaucoup en arrière. Si vous regardez déjà les outils qu'ils travaillent avec, on parlait de bulletins, sûr qu'on a fait un grand pas. Par contre, un item avec quoi on travaille tous les jours qui est très importante, c'est les feuilles de commande, les listes de prix qui sont complètement en anglais. Alors pour un gars qui sort de l'école, qui ne connaît pas, par exemple, qu'est-ce que c'est que tuna fish, ben, je vous dis franchement, qui est déjà en arrière.
When I started working, I worked for the federal government for a number of years, and I was working with English-speaking people exclusively. The most anguishing problem that I ran into for the first, number of years, is that I forever had the sensation, the certainty, that whenever I got into a group, you know, discussing people with my colleagues, only part of me was coming through, you know? And because of the inadequacy of my English expression, some of the thoughts that I had were downgraded, were not appreciated because I was not putting it across adequately.
You don't have to subjugate yourself to writing both in English and French if you find it in French easier. Fact is, most of the people in this room are writing now in their language of their first language. And many of the reports are coming through in French only, and some are coming in where English only.
You know, I think that with my own group, even with Barry, I can speak French, all the time. There's no problem. But most of the things that I handle and touch are things that have to, command the interest and the action of other groups of people. And if I do it only in French, I'm not going to get the attention it does when it's conceived, written in English. So, some instances, some of the projects that I attach a great deal of importance to, really I feel that I have to write them in both languages. And that's a hell of a problem.
What's your alternative? What's your alternative?
To write his report in English. Yeah.
But he's not helping them the ultimate goal of where we want to go. So, I mean...
Look, I have personal goals too, eh?
Sure.
I have personal, professional ambitions and personal goals.
Right.
And certainly I'm espousing that kind of, that kind of thinking that you're talking about. But I'm, at this stage of the game, communicating with you. And I'm saying, Jack Levine, this is a problem I have. Okay? Right. Now you're saying, Henry, if you've got that problem, why don't you do it in French anyway and force me to learn French? Fine, I'll consider it. But how about, how about thinking about a formula where the price would be on your side, as opposed to be on mine? What I'm saying, Jack, is that in order that you may learn to speak French, you are asking me to take a risk. And I'm saying I, wonder why I should extend myself to that extent,
What risk are you taking with me? If I don't understand all in French and I say to you, repeat it in English because I know you speak English, what risk do you think you're taking me for your growth and development in a company?
He's taking a very obvious risk indeed. You may underestimate his intelligence and ability through a limited understanding of what he's communicating to you. It's very easy to see that.
But I think you're going to always have that risk in Quebec, unless you chase out all the English people and only have the French people. Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying...
Then you're always going to have that element of risk.
I don't have a problem anymore. My English is quite good.
No,
I'm suggesting that you have a problem. You may have a problem at this stage of the game.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Not with me. But you may have a problem with the world out there,
Right.
with your customers,
You're right.
and with a great number of your employees.
I will not engage an employee who's going to change the character of our business. We're in business for one thing, to distribute foodstuffs as economically as we can. We've got to recognize the fact that in order for Steinbergs to do this successfully, they've got to recognize the environment in which they work. But certainly, I'm not going into the school business at any level. If people want to work for us and it's called upon that you be familiar with both languages, that becomes your problem. If you want to work in a company that has those standards, you prepare yourself for that. They're free to talk French if that's what their language is. Nobody interferes. But if a customer comes in or you have to deal with some other department in the business that the person speaks English, and if you can speak English, you better speak English. Like Jack put it to Henry Tremblay on that videotape. He says, "Who's stopping you from writing me in French?" I think that's very silly. He knows Jack doesn't speak French. He's not fluent in French. It would be disrespectful for him to write Jack in French when he knows Jack is not familiar with French. Sufficiently familiar that it's not difficult for him. The same principle applies to us. If we address our employees who find it difficult to understand English, then it's our business, in the best interest of our business, to address them in French.
We went through this kind of dialogue in our own team. Half of our team is French Canadian, and we came up with a rather interesting result, because one of our goals was to, how do we become a genuinely bilingual team so that the language in the group could be French or English, and we could reverse back and forth and so forth, that everybody can contribute and work at his maximum. And we had Dr. Bois there, Gilles Courville, Eric Jacques Lesage, and they came to the conclusion, I think it's an interesting one, that our team could not artificially become a bilingual team because it would become a less effective team. And he went on to
This
say,
is what I like about what you've just said. We can't create anything that's artificial because it'll become a meaningless thing.
and they said not only would it be less effective for the English members of the team, but the French Canadian members would find themselves very bored with the discussion in the group, that they would tend to, in any event, to want to put their concepts in English because if they put it in French, the English members of the team would miss the subtleties. Their solution to the problem was a long-term solution, and I think Jim brings it up, that the answer is not in trying to become artificially bilingual, but rather to replace members of the team who are handicapping that team over a period of time by French Canadians.
This is why I say we have a big job to do. I think the all-important thing is to clearly define this company's objectives and clearly define what the French fact means to our business. And then, progressively, set your targets, those that you figure you can do in the short term, those where it's absolutely essential that the man must be fluent in both languages. We've got to set these things down. And then we've got to set ourselves the time in order to bring this into being. But I will certainly not engage a number of people because they've got a higher level of education and give them special attention. That's without question not in my mind.
I think I made it clear that I've said, let's not go out and make jobs for anybody.
Right.
But I also made it clear that I don't think over the next, say, 5 years or so, that you're going to change the basic balance of this, the top, middle and top management group of this company by promotion from within of French-speaking people. And I think that French Canadians are looking towards, and perhaps even sometimes are unreasonable about it, but nonetheless, this is their demand. They're looking towards a higher participation in the higher levels of management of companies operating largely within the province of Quebec.
Ce n'est pas tellement le problème de la langue française, c'est le problème du fait français, d'une population en majorité, votre marché, qui est de langue française et avec lequel vous devez communiquer. I think we're fed up of being said, we are doing you a favor, we permitted you to learn English beautifully. Look at the way you have progressed in English. Thank you, we are grateful. Now we want to give you the same reward. We want to teach you French. Will you let us teach you French?
I have demonstrated, I think, outside of myself, and I have a problem speaking French, is that I view this province and this Montreal as much as mine as yours, Lydia, or as Gus's, and ours. And I hope, I didn't want to say ours because I didn't know how you felt about it. So I said mine. But there's a problem that overshadows this, is that I have to live, even if I could talk French, and I hope, I don't know if it's too late, it may be too late, a person would have to live in two worlds anyway, because most of the people that come to visit me from the outside world do not speak French at all. We have to recognize the fact that English is still the dominant market, the dominant thing, and that people coming in from the United States, which is our biggest market and our biggest supplier of merchandise that we sell for our customer and our consumer, is English speaking, not French speaking.
I think the only question that the French-Canadian gentlemen in this room feel like asking you, are you trying to get more customers in the East End, Quebec, French language speaking market? And if this is so, then there must be something done effectively for them. I think it would be plain blindness not to see that there is a difference between the French customers and the English Canadian customers. They live in the same city. Montreal is all theirs. It is as much for the English as much as for the French. They are very different. They don't put the priorities on the same items, on the same, you have all noticed that. So just for us, French Canadians, to try to explain to an English management what are those differences that they are not aware of except by intermédiaire all the time, not on their own level. is twice the job you're requesting for us. I think any French Canadian in your company should be paid twice, double.
That's exactly.
Here's a fact.
It seems to me that what we've been doing so far is talking about our perception, our problems, as far as employees of Steinberg's Limited, and as far as, what about our customers? Is it our perception or our feeling that we communicate from that point of view with our customers? Et puis ça, on peut en parler en se servant exactement des principes de gérance nord-américains dont Jack parlait tantôt. What we're talking about here is, what constitute good, sound business thinking.
Right.
Sans ça, un des dangers, là, c'est qu'on se laisse embarquer dans le problème sociopolitique qui nous entoure à Montréal actuellement. Écoute, on est tous des gens qui travaillent chez Steinberg Limited, qui sont en affaires. Baptême, commençons par envisager notre problème dans le contexte commercial.
We haven't touched the 40% of the English people in Montreal. What are we going to do about our business? In other words, the same thing that we're talking here actually happens at the store level. And I get calls from Store 8 and saying that she's not going to shop anymore in our stores because she's being answered in French and she's an English person. And so it's the attitude of the French to the English and English to the French.
Listen slowly, and here's what I'm saying. These are based on complaints and observations. We do not intend to continue in our employment people who are intent on undermining our business because of their language or separatism leanings, which means they do things that are contrary to this stated policy. This is what keeps our business going. This is what keeps our standards going. This is what keeps our patronage coming. This is what keeps the people who are now happily employed in our business secure in their employment. If you permit in our business people who undermine that because of their own personal views, leanings, or interests, you're undermining the business.
As long as they don't undermine the business.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
They can have these views.
Well, I don't mind I've nothing against a person who's a non-separatist. He wants to be a separatist, there's more power to him.
I wouldn't put the other in that you just added.
I said
I would.
Will you please listen to me slowly? We're talking to people at management level.
I understand.
And as you can see, this thing is even being recorded. It doesn't change my views at all.
Well, that's fine for...
I say that if you have a cashier in your store who's rude to a customer and won't reply, but because when we employed her, we knew that she can handle her job. She can meet the public, she can speak to them in English or French. And if she's deliberately rude and won't answer the customer when she's spoken to in English because she has French leanings or language leanings or anything else, she's detrimental to that business.
This is right, but what I think is wrong with your statement is that implicit in that is a sort of a threat. And I don't really think that that's what you mean. Threat? I mean the underlying threat sort of conform or out with you, you see? And I think that's the end result of what you're saying. Will you let me finish?
Right.
What I'm saying is I don't think that that's what you really mean, but I'm saying you're giving an impression.
I mean this.
Now, but wait a minute. Will you let me explain why I think you're not
saying?
All right. I don't think you're so unreasonable a person that you're saying one breach and the person is out without anybody
reason. That at all.
I know you didn't. Okay. What I'm saying is that type of wording gives that impression.
I didn't put that into a written policy.
I know.
I'm talking to my top people here now.
I agree. And I'm just doing this for purposes of clarification with everybody because I think it's right for everybody to know. You see, when you've mentioned separatists several times, and I don't think that all of the people who may be doing this sort of thing in greater or lesser degree are necessarily separatists. I think what we have to realize today is that first and foremost, any French Canadian worth his salt is a French Canadian nationalist, and, right?
I'm 100% for that.
Right. Now, then it gets into degrees of not black and not white, but gray. And you have to reason with people so that you're not destroying or even appearing to be against their French-Canadian nationalism, but being for them in that sense, but
No, there's too
reasoning
many
with
people.
them.
There's 18,000 people who are dependent upon their livelihoods in our business today and their standard of living, and who are not going along with that. We're derelict in our duties if we permit that to continue. And this is what I'm saying. So I'm making it crystal clear. So that everybody doesn't say, well, I don't know what to do under the circumstances. We're living in peculiar times. I'm saying, with all due respect to the times, this is our policy. We don't want people who are rude. Now, that person can't think that he can get by because we won't dare to implement company policy.
Mais je ne pense pas que tout ce qui a besoin d'être dit est en train d'être dit en ce moment. Et Jack, au commencement de la soirée, quand on a commencé ceci, avait demandé est-ce que ce ne serait pas plutôt un problème émotionnel, quelque chose qui n'est pas la langue vraiment, qui a trait au sentiment, plutôt que ce qui est en train d'être dit ici, ce soir. Et je me le demande aussi.
Personnellement, je suis très ouvert. C'est pas une question de séparatiste du tout. Si j'étais séparatiste, je laisserais Steinberg limiter, puis je suis pas intéressé, puis j'ai progressé chez Steinberg. Si c'est ça que tu penses, c'est pas une question de séparatiste du tout.
You know, we become emotional. There's no doubt about that. Until I was assigned to the company image study, I was very cool, and you know, I didn't care too much about the French and English. You know, I didn't care. But when I saw the big gap, you know, between what the English-speaking people, you know, the way they see Quebec and Montreal and the way that I see it, you know, it's unbelievable. It's like if we would live in different countries. And I'm not blaming anybody for that. You know, you have your radio station, you have your TV, you have your newspapers, you know, you have your own stores, you have everything. But, you know, when I saw that situation, I started to be a little more concerned. And in private discussions, I know that I get very wild. But you know, I get wild on anything.
I think that we need, in order to move forward rapidly, a lot more instruction in English and in French for all of us who need it, available as quickly as possible.
No company can undertake the costs that you are talking about. It's a self-cost.
It's a what?
It's a self-cost, a self-help.
Well, Jack, can one afford that attitude at this time of self-help, that the business determines what we're doing and so on and so forth? The question really is, where are we going to be 3 years from now, and what sort of market are we going to be existing? We have a very large investment here. So, calculated in terms of cost today, it may be a high cost, but it may be a very good investment in terms of only 2 years or even 3 years from now. Because of the process of change now coming, it's moving at such a rapid rate that we may not have any alternative except to find ourselves someday with our back against the walls, where there's no question of even having an opportunity to make that decision.
Ce que nous exigeons, c'est un Bill 64 qui pourrait avoir 3 articles. Article 1. L'unilinguisme français à tous les niveaux. Article 2. L'unilinguisme français à tous les niveaux.
The Jewish fact was not only a matter of language in the province of Quebec. You know as well as I do that the Jewish population actually did not have in the past to complain so much about the fact that they could not understand the language that was being spoken in the country where they happened to be. It was a lot more than that. It was deep in their hearts. Something actually that had to do with the history of the Jewish population going centuries, you know, back. And I think that right now the French fact in the province of Quebec is pretty much the same. You can have a group of people talking French around this table here, but they will not actually improve the situation that we're confronting right now, the French fact. And because people, be it a group of...
Let's look at this group over here.
Right.
Take a good look. Now, let's say we all spoke French fluently. Would that satisfy the French fact?
No.
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 Not at all.
No. And I think that in Quebec Division, actually, they have started they have started actually to solve the problem in a manner that will eventually please the French population. Because if the representation of the French-speaking people is not sufficient in the company, that we will continue to be faced with the same kind of problems that we are facing today.
One of the things you have to face, you, and I'm saying as the president of the company.
I face you, I face everything.
Are you going to change from being a Jewish Steinberg to a French Steinberg?
Nobody expects that.
No, nobody expects that, Jack, I don't think.
If you had 90%, 95%, 99.9%, and only Sam Steinberg, Jewish, and heading a company, with Steinbergs in each 130 stores in the province, you would not be looked upon as a French company or a French culture or a French in the province of Quebec.
You're altogether off the... You're off the...
Ask him.
That's not what,
That's true.
What do I got to ask you? For 25 years on the Jewish high holidays, all of our stores were closed, both to the public and to our employees. So there's no question of a masquerade of anything or a false facade. The question is, in this Steinberg organization, are the French Canadians being given equal opportunity with others? At one time, a French employee would not come to work at Steinberg's even if they had the opportunity, a better job, better pay, they still wouldn't come. It's how at that time they saw it. That was their background, their training, and everything else. With the passing of time did we learn to earn their respect. That goes with government, that goes with clergy, that goes with families. As they got to know us more and more and they made comparisons, they enjoyed working for us. They enjoyed shopping from our stores. Now the environment has changed, and we say it's not enough to go about the way we did in the past for 50 years or so. Whether they wanted to come to work for us, whether they had the training in us, what are we doing it to make it possible for them to enjoy the opportunities that this company has to offer? That's right.
We made a statement in Miracle.
A year after these discussions, the corporation announced a policy of functional bilingualism. Its aims: top management to be able to communicate effectively in French with French-speaking employees, all managers and supervisory personnel to be bilingual, and all employees to feel free to use their first language in contacts with their superiors. In business, as in evolution, adaptability to changes in the environment is a key to survival. And, as John Kenneth Galbraith has pointed out, survival is the corporation's primary goal.
This may be a series of meetings that we will have. So as to give us time, because this is vital to our business, to give us time to deal with every aspect of it. And I don't know what may evolve as to the best possible approaches to dealing with all the areas that Jim covered this morning. Judging by past, this is the only way to go. It's taken us some 5 years, or 5 years.